Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Namofsky. Today's episode, we're discussing global women's economic empowerment. So, Lida, the next question is, what do you think is the biggest challenge for women's economic empowerment at the global level?
Well, I think this is twofold. So on the G's level, the first thing is continuity. So each year, the presidency rotates from country to country. And so do the priorities, which is also a problem for the B20 because it's kind of like Groundhog Day. You're starting fresh every single year.
Mm-hmm.
And the second part is execution, because what you need is structural change from the governments in order for action to really take place. But every country is at a different stage in their gender equality journey. And so you don't have something where consensus can be found. For example, in the West, we're still, and you mentioned it before, we're working on the gender gap for parity, for pay, and then also retention of women in senior leadership positions. But in the global South, what we have is some women can't even open a bank account without a male relative signing permission. And some of them can't own land, even though the business they have is cultivating the land and farming, which is feeding the entire community.
Right. You know, these are things that we don't even think about. These are things that unless you are, going to Europe or visiting on a global scale, you don't see that. And a lot of people assume that, okay, well, this is the way we live here and this is the way everybody else lives over there. You mentioned retention of senior women leaders as being one of the challenges, and it seems to be elusive to a lot of companies. Why do you think this is the reason? Like, why do you think it's elusive to companies?
Well, to me, this is all about behavioral economics. And so there are companies who are really proud about having policies and procedures in place for gender diversity and equality. And tone from the top is vital to make sure that this actually happens. But having a written creed just isn't enough. Mm-hmm. What you have to look at is the basic culture of the company itself. So is it a dog-eat-dog world? Is it the almighty dollar at all costs and above everything else? Is it collaborative or is it combative? So if you have an antiquated culture, your results are going to be muted at best. And no tone from the top is going to convince a woman to work at that company. So what companies need to do is create business practices that are going to attract women to their workforce. They already do that to get millennials to come who want to work at companies that are sustainably responsible. So why not for women? Now, we've got people and companies who don't want to implement initiatives unless there's a positive incentive to their bottom line. So I've got a stat for that.
Okay.
And it's nothing new, but it's from McKinsey. And they did a study where companies who had greater gender diversity in their executive team were 25% more likely to outperform on profitability than companies who did not. And a little bit further on that, if the company executive team had ethnic and cultural diversity, that number goes up to 36%. So these are real hard numbers. Mm-hmm. And companies just aren't they lack ambitious plans. I saw one company who was super proud to say that they were going to increase their women in senior leadership by 2% over the next 3 years. I mean, what are we even talking about here? Like half a woman, right? So, and just for context, they were starting at just over 20% of women in senior leadership, and they were going to move a whole 2%. So we're lacking some ambition out there.
You know what? And to add to that too, I've heard that there are certain companies out there that pride themselves on empowering women and having them move up to the senior ranks. Yet they don't have a system to help them stay senior. And typically they end up failing within time because they don't have that network to uphold them there.
No, that's very true. And it's something that I think what can help with that is some of the actions that companies can take in order to really retain women in senior leadership positions and get them there. So the first one is obvious. Look at the hiring and promotion policies of a company and make sure that there are people in middle management. Because if you don't have a pool of people in the middle, you have nobody to grab from to go to the top. And another thing I think is vital is mentorship is really important, but sponsorship is even more important. and this is when somebody puts your name forward when you're not even in the room and introduces you to people that you never would have met. So what they're doing, and especially in male-dominated industries, is we have to have male sponsors for the women.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back, so please don't go away.